Aiden Davis was a frail, unremarkable child, relentlessly bullied by his peers at school. Each day he faced their cruel taunts, physical abuse, and unending torment. He dreamed of having the power to retaliate, to inflict the same pain and suffering upon his tormentors that they had inflicted upon him. One night, as Aiden lay in bed, his body aching from the latest beating, he drifted into a fitful sleep. In his dreams, he found himself in a surreal, nightmarish landscape, engulfed by flames and shadows. There, in the heart of the darkness, he encountered a demon, a being of pure evil and malice. The demon offered Aiden a deal, a chance to obtain the power he so desperately desired. "I can grant you the strength to destroy your enemies," the demon hissed, its claws extending towards the boy. "But be warned. Once the power is bestowed upon you, it can never be returned. It will become a part of you forever, until the end of your days." Blinded by his pain and anger, Aiden accepted the demon's offer without hesitation. He felt the power coursing through his veins, a searing heat that consumed his weakness and replaced it with a cold, unyielding strength. When Aiden awoke, he was a changed being. The timid, frightened boy he had once been was gone, replaced by a vessel of pure vengeance, armed with a power he had yet to fully comprehend. At first, Aiden wasn't sure if the dream had been real. He went about his days as usual, enduring the taunts and beatings from his tormentors. But then, something strange happened. When one of the bullies shoved him against a locker, Aiden felt a sudden surge of energy coursing through his body. The bully's jacket began to smoke, and then, without warning, it burst into flames. Aiden watched in horror as the bully screamed and flailed, desperately trying to extinguish the flames. The other students ran in panic, and the fire alarm blared throughout the school. Amidst the chaos, Aiden slipped away, his heart pounding and his mind racing. Over the next few days, Aiden began to experiment with his newfound power. He started small, focusing on inanimate objects. A crumpled piece of paper, a discarded soda can, a withered leaf, each burst into flames at his command. Aiden felt a rush of exhilaration every time he used his ability, a sense of control he had never experienced before. As his confidence grew, Aiden began to turn his attention to those who had wronged him. He started with small acts of retribution, a singed eyebrow here, a smoldering shoe there. The bullies were confused and frightened, unsure of what was happening to them. Emboldened by his successes, Aiden grew bolder. He confronted one of his tormentors behind the school, his eyes blazing with barely contained rage. The bully, a boy named Jack, sneered at him, unaware of the power Aiden now possessed. "What do you want, freak?" Jack spat, his fists clenched. Aiden smiled coldly. "I want you to burn." With a mere thought, Aiden set Jack's clothes ablaze. The bully screamed in agony, rolling on the ground as the flames consumed him. Aiden watched, his heart pounding with a mixture of exhilaration and horror. As Jack's cries faded into silence, Aiden felt a creeping sense of unease. The power was intoxicating, but it was also terrifying. He had taken a life, crossed a line he could never uncross. In the days that followed, Aiden grappled with the weight of his actions. He had always dreamed of making his tormentors pay, but the reality of it was far more disturbing than he had ever imagined. The smell of burning flesh lingered in his nostrils, and the sound of Jack's screams echoed in his dreams. Despite his growing reservations, Aiden found himself drawn to the power like a moth to a flame. He began to seek out new targets, not just those who had bullied him, but anyone who irritated or annoyed him. A rude cashier, a noisy neighbor, a teacher who gave him a bad grade, all fell victim to his fiery wrath. As the body count rose, so did Aiden's paranoia. He knew it was only a matter of time before someone connected the dots, before the authorities came for him. He became increasingly isolated, withdrawing from the few friends he had and spending his days in a state of constant vigilance. Desperate to be free of the curse, Aiden summoned the demon once more. He pleaded and bargained, offering anything in exchange for his freedom. But the demon merely laughed, its voice dripping with malevolent glee. "You made your choice, boy," it sneered. "The power is yours now and forever. You are bound to me, a servant of the darkness destined to carry out my will." Aiden collapsed to his knees, his soul crushed under the weight of his own foolishness. He had been so blinded by his thirst for revenge that he had unwittingly accepted a fate worse than death. In that moment, something within Aiden shattered. He realized that he could never escape the demon's grasp, never be free of the power that had corrupted him. And so, with a heavy heart, he made a fateful decision. If he couldn't defeat the demon, he would embrace it. He would become one of Satan's earthly minions, a bringer of chaos and destruction, and unleash hell upon anyone who stood in his way. As the years passed, Aiden's infamy grew. He became known as the Firestarter, a shadowy figure who left a trail of charred bodies in his wake. He was feared by all who knew of him, a monster wearing human skin. But even as he reveled in his own wickedness, Aiden could never escape the memory of that fateful night, the moment he had sold his soul for the power to fight back. He was a slave to his own rage, a prisoner of the demon that had granted him his abilities. Aiden walked the earth, a creature of pure malevolence forever bound to the will of the devil. He had become the very thing he had once feared, a harbinger of death and destruction, a herald of the eternal flames. But deep down in the shattered remnants of his humanity, Aiden knew that his power was a curse, not a blessing. He had traded his soul for the chance to strike back at his enemies, and in doing so, he had damned himself to an eternity of servitude and suffering. One night, as Aiden prowled the streets, he spotted a young woman walking alone. There was something about her that drew him in, a profound sadness in her eyes that resonated with him on a primal level. Without hesitation, he began to follow her, his mind already conjuring the flames that would consume her. She turned down a deserted alley, and Aiden quickened his pace, his heart pounding with anticipation. As he closed in on her, the woman spun around to face him. In her eyes, Aiden saw a flicker of recognition, a knowing look that sent a chill down his spine. She knew what he was, what he could do. "Please," she begged, her voice trembling. "Don't do this. You have a choice." For a moment, Aiden hesitated, his power wavering for the first time in years. The woman took a step towards him, her hand outstretched. "It's not too late," she whispered. "You can still turn back, still find redemption." But Aiden was too far gone, too consumed by the darkness that had claimed his soul. With a twisted smile, he focused his power on the woman, watching as the flames began to devour her. She screamed in agony, her flesh melting and bubbling as the fire consumed her. The stench of burning hair and skin filled the alley, and Aiden inhaled deeply, savoring the scent of his handiwork. As the woman's charred remains crumpled to the ground, Aiden felt a momentary pang of regret. But it was quickly overwhelmed by the intoxicating rush of power, the knowledge that he held the power of life and death in his hands. He walked away from the alley, leaving the smoldering corpse of his latest victim behind. He knew it was only a matter of time before the authorities caught up to him, but he didn't care. He was a god among men, a bringer of destruction and chaos. And as he vanished into the shadows of the city, Aiden knew that he would never stop. The fire within him would continue to burn, consuming everything and everyone in its path. He was the master of his own destiny, the king of the ashes. But in the darkest recesses of his twisted soul, Aiden knew that his power was a curse, not a blessing. It had warped him, molded him into a monster beyond redemption. And one day he knew the flames would consume him too, leaving nothing but the bitter taste of ashes in his mouth. And in the end, as the fires of hell rose up to claim him, Aiden realized the true cost of his bargain. He had gained the power to destroy his enemies, but in doing so, he had destroyed himself, body and soul, forever damned to serve the will of the demon that had granted him his power.